I'm Sally. I'm the author of Octopus Encounter.
Hi, I'm Clyde. I'm the videographer.
Hi, I'm Reggie. I'm the photographer. Come on, let's go diving.
In Chapter 9, Susan and Eric set out for the wall. Susan has to overcome her fear of entering a new habitat that she thinks is deep and dark. She soon realizes that although every creature is different, it belongs to a family of similar creatures.
She also learns that she is special and different and that she belongs to God's family. Sally, I see the reef as a city filled with families. Each family is made up of unique creatures. Many times you can tell who belongs to what family just by looking at them.
Clyde, I like that idea. I remember when I first arrived at a reef, creatures of all kinds crawled and swam and oozed all over the place. I didn't know who belonged to what, but after a while I began to see that many looked and behaved somewhat alike. I could say, oh, I know that's a blenny of some sort, because look how tiny and long its body is.
Are you saying that once you know what a spiny lobster looks like, and you suddenly come upon its cousin, the Spanish lobster, that you can say, oh, that's a lobster?
Yes, I'm saying that. And believe me, if I did meet up with one of those Spanish lobsters, it wouldn't be hard for me to recognize that all those twitching parts belong to a member of the lobster family.
Oh, so then recognizing families will always be easy.
It doesn't always work that way because individual species within a family can really look different. And scientists sometimes organize them by their internal parts.
Susan and Eric must have been amazed at some of the families they saw on the wall. One that I'm sure they noticed right away was the sponge.
Well, the yellow tube sponge sure made an impression on me the first time I saw it. They have fluorescent pigments in their tissues. It alters the wavelengths of the light that strikes them, and this makes the sponge look yellow, even in deep water where colors don't show up.
Divers usually don't touch sea creatures, as you know. But I had no idea what a sponge's texture was like, and I just had to know. Then you came along and caught me at it.
I looked up and noticed your fingers looked yellow. I couldn't figure out how that happened. And it didn't rub off either.
After a while, that yellow stain actually turned black and blue. It was really weird.
You know, I got a yellow stain on my hands once when I picked up a living sand dollar. I think your stain was probably from the sponge.
After a while, it did wash off. Another sponge that brightens up the reef is that orange icing sponge. It's an encrusting sponge that lines the underside of hard corals. They actually protect the coral from other sponges that would bore down into them.
Sponges really come in a lot of sizes. Once I saw a barrel sponge that was so huge I was tempted to climb right in and hide from you. Of course I didn't, because I didn't want to damage the sponge.
One of the smallest sponges is the pink vase sponge. You wouldn't be hiding in that one. That pretty sponge might be small, but the sponge brittle star loves to hide inside and call it home.
Some sponges don't stand up in tube forms. They lay down in thick layers, and they grow over top of corals. They're called encrusting sponges. Sometimes they even line the underside of a coral.
A strange-looking group of sponges is the rope sponge. They're named after ropes because, well, that's exactly what they look like.
The family of sponges do help the reef. They filter out diatoms and bacteria and protozoans and lots of other organisms. I read that many sponges are able to filter over 50 gallons of water a day.
Wow, that's amazing. Sponges belong to the Porphyria family and are known to be made up of a system of pores that perforate their bodies. Tiny needles of silica scattered about in them act as a skeleton that holds them up.
They may be made of different colors and sizes and shapes, but they're all made up of the same thing, masses of cells embedded in a gelatinous mass.
Whatever they're made of, they're a welcome sight on any of my dives.
Well, there's lots of families on the reef, but I have to admit the angelfish family is one of my favorites. They're thin and round and splashed with color. I like to imagine that God might have grabbed the end of a rainbow and painted them as they swished past. They wear rings and stripes and bands and blotches of the wildest imaginable colors.
They are certainly reef residents that divers appreciate. Why, I remember Reggie photographing a pair of French angels one night. His camera lights didn't seem to bother them, nor did our presence. I remember that we all sat around on the sand and just watched them.
We did have a good look at them, didn't we?
Scientists think these fish mate for life, and they usually appear in pairs.
As beautiful as they are, that queen angelfish, it tops the list of the most colorful fish. They move about the reef, going from sponge to sponge, taking a nip here and then a nip there. It's amazing that the glass spicules in the sponges don't bother them.
At first, I didn't recognize rock beauties as being part of this family. They don't have a lot of the different colors that others do. But when their bold yellow and black bodies zoom past, they really grab my attention. They seem to be quite shy, and they spend a lot of time hiding. I found it difficult to really get good pictures of them.
You know what I like, Clyde? It's those funny little hermit crabs. They tote their shells all over the reef. Nothing tops those baby blue eyes and red blotched hairy bodies.
Well, they may look funny to you, Sally, but they are a very important family. Along with other crabs, they have a very important job. At night, they clean up the reef.
I see those important little crabs everywhere, under ledges and peeking between the tentacles of a sea anemone, or sometimes just charging across the reef like they own the place.
It amazes me that they run all over the reef in the darkness. They seem to know where they're going, and they seem to know how to get there. I'll just stick to using my strong dive light.
There's one little crab that really makes me laugh every time I think about it. It has a tiny triangular body with 2 bubble eyes sticking out on each side. Its 8 legs are so twiggy they hardly even exist, and it has 2 front appendages that have the most miniature of pinches at the end of them. It's too cute to be a spider, but that's what it looks like. One time, I was lucky enough to cradle one in my hands. Boy, did it jump around. I had to be careful not to hurt it.
I enjoy seeing them too, Sally. Hey, what about the parrotfish family? They're amazing creatures with those funny-looking buck teeth. Each one can make 2 or 3 tons of white sand a year.
They use those buck teeth to scrape algae off coral formations, and then they excrete pure white sand. They've got to have pretty strong teeth to do that. They go from coral formation to coral formation, and that's why they don't destroy any particular coral.
It isn't always easy to identify these characters because they come in 3 different phases. A young parrotfish is called a juvenile fish. They look much different than the second, or that is the initial phase, which we call adults, and includes both male and female. When a parrotfish is in the 3rd or terminal phase, it's called the supermale.
Well, whatever phase they might be in, their buck teeth sure give them away, and their general shape is similar too. I think they really look particularly cute when they're all snuggled up to the reef wearing pajamas.
Well, I know you're going to groan when I say that I like the worms. But I'm fascinated by them. I mean, the feather duster worms that pop out and open up their filter feeding apparatuses. I never get tired of waving my hand over them and watching them disappear with a pop.
I know you like them, Clyde, because we have thousands of pictures of Christmas tree worms perched on top of corals with their gill plumes unfurled in the water.
They're attached to the corals and can't run from their enemies, but they're still on guard. Just a slightest little movement nearby, or sometimes even a shadow from the sun passing over, will cause them to disappear into their tube home and snap the calcified trap door shut. They aren't about to come back out until they think it's safe. Sometimes I have to wait a very long time before one will come out and unwind itself in all of its beauty.
Okay, I have to admit it, worms can be pretty. I do like that purple feather duster worm. It makes quite a sight when the group of them open their gill plumes. They look like a bouquet of purple flowers, except that they're alive and they're swishing in the currents.
I think it's good that scientists have grouped the reef residents into families, though I'm sure the sea creatures don't care one way or the other.
On the other hand, though, we people do. We like to belong. I think that God's family members, just like the sea creatures, have certain similar characteristics.
They do. They love God and each other.
And they're kind and helpful to others.
Sally, I'd like it if you would ask God to help us always to act like family members.
Dear Father, thank you so much for adopting us into your family. Pour your love into us so that we will always act like a family member. We know you love us, and we know you'll help us. Amen.